Back with you tonight, John in Focus, and thanks for staying on. The controversial Electoral Reform Bill was adopted by members of Parliament earlier today with 232 votes in favour, 98 against and 3 abstentions. The official opposition, DA and the IFP, voted against it, while 32 EFF MPs voted in support. Opponents in and outside Parliament have argued that the bill puts independent candidates at a disadvantage, demanding that they contest against parties than individuals from political parties. They contend that the economic freedom fighters want individual independent candidates to pay the same amount of money as political parties to participate in the election, something they believe is unconstitutional and undemocratic. A possible court challenge against the bill is now on the cards. Joining us now to share their thoughts on the bill, IFP Treasurer General and Chief Whip of the party in Parliament, Narend Singh, and political analyst Dr. Dale McKinley, as well as EFF National Head of Elections, Thapelo Magale. Let's get your views also tonight on 072-110-5584 or tweet us at Newzroom 405. Did the lawmakers make the right decision as the bill now heads to the National Council of Provinces? Gentlemen, good evening and thank you very much for your time and for joining us today here on In Focus. The Minister of Home Affairs at the AWEB General Assembly saying it would be very scary for a bill to go through Parliament without anybody saying anything about it. Every bill has got to go through this particular kind of opposition. It's not the first bill to be opposed and certainly will not be the last to be opposed in such a manner. Narend, let me hear from you. I mean, why do you believe this particular bill is a special one in terms of it being prioritized in the way that it has been?
Well, good evening to you, Thabo. Good evening to your viewers, and good evening to fellow participants on this program. Yes, today, as you would know, and your viewers would know, the IFP objected to the passing of this particular bill because whilst in principle we believe that we need to promote multi-party democracy, we need to ensure that every South African citizen has a right to participate in elections, and we believe in the decision that the Constitutional Court had made, that Parliament needed to ensure that the legislation that we had in place allowed for independents to participate. Our criticism lay in the fact that it was a flawed process in terms of timeframes. The Constitutional Court had made a ruling in June 2020, and it was only in January 2022, 18 months later, that the Minister of Home Affairs and the Cabinet and Executive brought before Parliament a bill that was based on what the Minister said today was a report of a Ministerial Advisory Committee. And as far as the public are aware, that was a minority report. So we feel that the principle needs to be supported for independents to participate, but we just can't make it an issue of, yes, we've allowed you to participate and now you can, we are imposing certain restrictions and regulations on you. So this morning at the National Programming Committee, I appealed to the Honourable Speaker and other party leaders that we give ourselves a little more time in considering what was contained in the bill, so that at the end of the day we could have a bill that has wide support, not only from members of Parliament, but also from the general public, and is also in keeping with the spirit of what the Constitutional Court had asked us to do.
Yeah.
Now, we feel that some of these things were not done, and they did not agree to a postponement, and we are now saddled with a bill which we feel is imperfect and has not gone the whole way in ensuring the participation of independents in a manner that the Constitutional Court would have wanted us to consider.
Yeah. Now, earlier on, of course, economic freedom fighters, in their acceptance and support of the bill, said processes were transparent, processes were fair, and they were consistent with what the Constitutional Court had ruled, and everyone was allowed, civil society was allowed to participate. It was an equal platform for all. So, Thapelo, what do you say to the issues that the IFP is raising?
Thank you very much, Thabo. Firstly, let me start by congratulating our fighters in Komazi for yet another decisive victory in the by-elections yesterday. Coming to the issue that you are raising here, Thabo. As the EFF, we feel that the processes that we followed in terms of that need to be followed for the enactment of the bill were fair and transparent. They afforded all parties, civil rights movements and members of the public to come and give their input in terms of this particular bill. So in terms of the processes that needed to be followed, they tick the box. So we are satisfied in that regard.
So what do you make of the call from the IFP? Would it have made any harm to give it a little bit more time so that the bill gets broader public support?
Look, we are working within very tight time frames, Thabo. The bill needed to be passed as soon as possible because if we had waited, if we wait for long, there's a possibility that we might jeopardize the 2024 elections. So with the current process, and it allows even for the IEC to be able to prepare, make thorough preparations in line with the bill. So I think we are working within very tight time frames for the passing of this bill.
Yeah. Talk to me about then why you believe the things, for example, that are contained in this bill are consistent with the constitution of the country. For example, the question of you saying, yes, the threshold for independent candidates should be put at 20,000. It should be higher than that of political parties. Where is the fairness in that?
Look, Thabo, if we are going to have a minimum or a lower threshold, we are going to find ourselves sitting with one of the longest ballot papers in the world, because it will mean every Tom, Dick and Harry who thinks that they stand a chance because maybe they are popular in their part of the village, then they get tempted to want to contest the national or provincial elections. It is going to make the work of the IEC very cumbersome in that regard. So those are some of the things that we are looking at when we say that the minimum threshold should be set at 20,000. In fact, that is one of the issues that we raise very strongly in the portfolio committee meetings. Even though it was not agreed to, however, we are somehow satisfied with the 20% that is captured in the bill. If we're to lower the bars, we stand the risk of voters being faced with a ballot paper that looks like a Bible, because everyone will want to contest. So there should be a way that people who are chance takers don't get to be part of the ballot paper. So I think 20,000 as a minimum threshold, it's quite fair.
Dr. McKinley, the lawmakers seized with, of course, the very important question of what system will give concrete realization of this expression that the people shall govern, and not only govern in terms of the right, but also govern in terms of freely being able to elect who is going to be their representation. Did we go about it the right way? And in terms of the conclusion that we have now reached, is this the best system that will guarantee that for us?
No, I don't believe it is. And for a very, very specific reason, which is if we want to have the fundamental principle of any free and fair elections is one vote, one equal vote. One person, one equal vote. Not one vote, unequal person, or vice versa. And what this bill does is it gives unfair advantage to political parties. And I'll tell you why it does that. Because it's not a constituency-based system. So in local government, we have a constituency-based system. You have a ward, you elect, everybody knows what it is. But with provincial and national, we adopted a two-tier system, which was that it's a party system, a party list system, so nobody has a particular constituency. You vote for the party then allocates the seats accordingly. And then you have the PR side, which is, of course, proportional to the amount of votes you get. Then a political party, which might not have won, for example, a small political party would then be able to get a seat, as we have in Parliament now with one seat. You got 30,000 votes, 32,000 votes, I think, in one case nationally, and you get a parliamentary seat. But if we don't have, if we're now going to say that, so and this is where it gets complicated. If we break down this law, what the law says now, or this bill says, it reserves 200 seats for independent candidates, and it reserves 200 seats purely for party political candidates. So that, in the first place, is a potential very controversial move, because basically what you're doing is you're saying independent candidates can only attest half the seats that are available in the National Assembly, and the other half are reserved for political parties. My sense is, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but my sense is that will not pass constitutional muster in the context of free and fair elections. The second thing, of course, is based upon the quota that is used to determine how many seats are then allocated proportionally. And in the case of this bill, what it does is it takes all of those, so independent candidates who lose and independent candidates who are above the quota. In other words, you only needed 80,000 votes to win, but you got 200,000. The extra votes then all get shifted to the political parties, basically, and then that goes into the other 200 seats. So basically what independent candidates are being, political parties are getting essentially 2 votes, one in the 200, the other in the 200, and then they're also getting what's left over from the candidates, or what is wasted votes, so to speak, in that context. Again, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but I don't think this will pass constitutional muster in the context of this is the concern, is that, and many of us were involved in the contestation of the Protection of State Information Bill, which had very similar, very controversial constitutional context. And it went on for 2 years. It sat on President Zuma's desk for 4 years, and he didn't sign it. And it still hasn't become law 10 years later. My fear is, of course, the irony, given the concern about the time frame, is that if a case then now is if the NCOP passes this bill within the next 2 months, and then a case is a legal case, a challenge, then this bill will be suspended. Then we will not have we will not have national elections on time.
Yeah.
We will not, and that's the problem. If we have a court case that takes, I think, very serious constitutional issues, then elections will not be able to happen as long as that court case is not heard. So there's the irony of the time frame situation in the context. So I think we've got a lot of issues here. We've got a lot of problems. The NCOP has an opportunity to address some of these issues, because the National Assembly is not the only one. And then, of course, the President also can say, I've got concerns. I want to put this to the Constitutional Court to see what they say, or I want to get further legal opinion. So this is not the end of the road, but there are serious concerns with the present version.
Okay. I want you to address something, and then I'm going to get Thapelo to respond to this issue of additional votes, and Narend Singh is also going to jump in. But here's my question. Is the Minister of Home Affairs just merely politicking when he says, among the documentation presented to Cabinet is a certificate that this bill is actually constitutional?
Yes, he's playing politics. Because that's not the way it works. The legislatures are given the opportunities to pass bills, and then it goes to the President for his assent. If the President is concerned about that, he refers it to the Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court hasn't seen this bill and assented to it, so that's, I'm afraid to say, but the Minister of Home Affairs, if he's doing that, is simply playing politics.
Narend, the issues that are being raised here, I mean, the minister saying that is not the question at hand. This is not what the Constitutional Court said we need to do. The Constitutional Court said we need to ensure that independent candidates are able to contest elections, national and provincial. These other issues that you are raising could possibly be dealt with at another stage by Parliament, because Parliament would have future discussions around the systems that we use in elections.
Yeah, Thabo, that was an easy way out by the Minister. I mean, firstly, the nub of the issue is that it took the Minister and the Executive 18 months after the Constitutional Court had indicated that independents should be given an opportunity to participate, to present something to Parliament. And then when he presents something to Parliament, he goes against what the Ministerial Advisory Committee says in terms of ensuring that we look at the Frederick van Zyl report. And electoral reform was something that was thought about in many years ago when Prince Buthelezi was Minister of Home Affairs. Ideally, what we should be having in South Africa now with 28 years into democracy is a mixed system at national and provincial level. A mixed system like local government, which accommodates both PR and constituency based. Now, one can understand why we had a proportional representation system way back in 1994. It was because we came out of apartheid. We needed to ensure that everybody had a say in governance and in parliament. And it was appropriate at that time, probably appropriate for 15 years. But we could still have a system, like in local government, where you get PR seats to accommodate that concern moving forward, and you have a constituency based. And it's not too late for even the NCOP to consider maybe 50 constituencies around South Africa and let independents contest these elections as independents in those constituencies. Now, I've just come back from Zambia on an environmental conference, and there every member is elected to a constituency. And there are 11 independents in the Parliament of Zambia. Now, it's easy to say, well, we are accommodating independents, but to what extent are we accommodating them? And to the independents as well, what we would like to say is that if you contest as an independent, you contest a constituency and nothing more than that. There shouldn't be reserve votes, etc. As far as my colleague in the EFF is concerned, I have been informed by my member who sits on this committee, Honourable von der Merwe, that every step of the way since January, the EFF and the public representatives that appeared in the public hearing objected strongly to the passing of this bill. Now, I'm not saying that one should not have a change of heart at the last moment, because even as late as Wednesday last week, they objected. Now, everyone is entitled to change their minds. But I think what we must not do is say, well, we are passing this legislation, let's throw it to the NCOP. We could have had more dialogue with civil society and everybody else, and we can come to a position where there's a win-win for everybody, where the independence demands are reduced to an extent to make the IEC able to put in regulations that will ensure we don't have a ballot paper like a Bible or a Bhagavad Gita or a Quran or whatever book, because it is going to be cumbersome. But there are ways to still resolve this issue as the bill goes to the NCOP, and we are appealing for people to come together and the minister to be more reasonable and the executive to be more reasonable in his approach when dealing with the bill as it goes to the NCOP. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, Thapelo is going to answer to some of those issues that you are raising there. IFP Treasurer General and Chief Whip of the party in Parliament, Narend Singh, as well as political analyst Dr. Dale McKinley, and Thapelo Magale, the National Head of Elections for the Economic Freedom Fighters. Your thoughts? Did the lawmakers make the right decision here? 072-110-5584. In Focus continues next. Back live tonight on In Focus, and the controversial Electoral Reform Bill under the spotlight being discussed, of course, earlier on in the National Assembly and voted for, and now it's heading to the NCOP. We have still with us IFP Treasurer General and Chief Whip of the party in the National Assembly, Narend Singh, and political analyst Dr. Dale McKinley, as well as EFF National Head of Elections, Thapelo Magale. Thapelo, let's come back to you. Two things that have been raised. One is, all along you were opposed to this electoral bill. Why the change of heart? But two, I heard you saying that, yeah, it's a good thing that if they get additional votes, these independents, they must lose those votes. They meet that number, they get that one seat. They mustn't get any more seats, unlike the political parties. Dr. McKinley is saying that surely cannot be fair and can't be something that will be constitutional.
Thank you very much, Thabo. Let me start with your last question. Firstly, it is the choice of any South African citizen to choose whether they want to contest the election as an independent or they want to contest through a political party. So no one is forced here. Everyone is exercising their free will to choose whether they want to participate as an individual or as a political party. Now, if you choose to participate as an individual, now if you get a seat based on the number of votes that you have received, if you receive a seat, you can't then come and say, because you got the quota is 40,000, you have 80,000, therefore it means you must get 2 seats because you went above the number of votes that were required for that particular seat. You are contesting as an individual, not as an organization. Therefore, you should be entitled to the 1 seat that you get, because you are not an organization, you are an individual. And coming to the question of our opposition in the portfolio committee, there are a number of issues that we raised very strongly in the portfolio committee. One of them is on the threshold, which we feel very strongly about, that the threshold should at least be 20,000, because it will discourage any chance takers from participating in this election and complicating the election and making the work of the IEC very cumbersome. Like I made an example earlier that we don't want to find ourselves with a ballot paper the size of the DRC. DRC had one of the biggest or longest ballot papers in one of the recent elections that they held there. So those are some of the issues that we raised in the portfolio committee, including the issue of the verification process of these signatures that independent candidates have to submit. Because we can't have a situation where you just sit there with the voters roll, or you fraudulently fill up the forms there and you submit to the IEC to say that, yes, you have this particular number of people who are supporting your candidacy to be part of the election. But those names and signatures have been fraudulently obtained. So we are very vehement in the portfolio committee with regard to that, say that we want a proper verification process to ensure that the people who are captured on those forms are people that would have been spoken to, would have been canvassed by the independent candidates, not just buy data from these companies selling IDs and cell phone numbers of people, and then you say you want to contest an election. Yeah, doesn't work like that.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, I mean, the Constitutional Court saying no, allow the independents to come and participate in elections nationally and provincially. I'm thinking the thinking there is that they are going to participate on an equal platform, right? So whether you're an organization or whether you're an independent, you're participating on an equal platform. If we are going to pay the same deposit, surely if you as an organization, you meet the quota and go above and you're able to get 2 seats, if I meet the quota, I paid the same deposit and above, why shouldn't I be able to get the second seat? Just explain that to me.
No, but you are contesting as an individual. You are not an organization. Organizations submit party lists to the IEC to say that, these are the people that who are putting forward for this particular seats. So if we get these seats and if we need to replenish the seats, these are the particular names that should be taken from the list. But if you are contesting as an individual, which is what this bill seeks to do, to ensure that individuals can freely contest as independent candidates, you can't then come and say, no, because you received more votes, therefore you are entitled to 2 seats. You contested the election as an individual, not as an organization. It is the point that this civil organizations, they keep on making, to say that they are opposed to the PR list and all of those things, but now they want the very same thing that they are opposed to work for them. They must
can I come in?
Yes, Dr. McKinley, I'm going to let you come in. Yes. Thapelo, finish up?
No, I'm done there.
All right. Dr. McKinley, you can come in there. That's the point of contention, is it not?
No, that's not the point of contention at all. I have no problem personally with issues of you get a seat according to the question. The way it is calculated, the quotas are differential. So let me explain. how that happens in this bill. Basically, if you're an independent candidate, because of the division of the 200 seats, this is where the problem starts, is you've divided 200 seats on one side and 200 seats on the other instead of having a unitary election. And as a result, only 200 can be contested by independents. Political parties can contest all 400. So there's the first unfairness of the thing. If you only are able to contest 200 versus all of them, then you are at an advantage, clearly, the first thing. The second thing is that because quotas are basically calculated on the total number of votes divided by the total number of seats. So let's take an example of Limpopo, for example, okay? Limpopo, let's say, has almost 10% of South Africa's population. We have 400 seats in the National Assembly. Therefore, 10% of the seats means there's 40 seats up for grabs in Limpopo, as an example. Independent candidates can contest 20 of those seats. Political parties can contest all 40 of those seats. Now, what happens when those 20 seats of the sides of the independent candidates are done, and the political parties have gotten whatever they've got there, but then the other 20 are independent candidates can't contest those. So effectively, what you're saying is political parties can double their vote. They can have the 200 and they can have the other 200, but independent candidates can't. And when you get to the other side, the 200 that are only for political parties, the quota virtually then, because of the calculation, can be less than what it is for independent candidates. Yeah. So, for example, using that Limpopo example, right, if Limpopo it has 1 million people that vote, for example, then the quota for the independent seats would be 50,000 per seat. Whereas if you go for the other 200, because the votes of the independents are now not even considered and those excess votes are not considered, for a political party you could go as low as 40 to 35,000 per seat. This is the problem is in the calculations and the way that the unfair calculations gives the political parties unfair advantage over independent candidates. I'm not contesting the fact that an independent candidate should only get one seat. It's the question of the formula and the quota system.
So, Dr. McKinley, what do you make then of the position that says, well, no one is forced to participate. You choose to participate as an independent candidate, and that those are the cards that you're dealt, and that's pretty much it.
Sure. I mean, listen. Sure, of course you're free to choose as you come as an independent candidate, but as you rightfully pointed out, we have a situation. We need to have free and fair elections. So, in the context of fairness, then you basically have to have a level playing field, and that's and that's the bottom line here is that the calculations and the way that it's being done in this bill, I don't think the Constitutional Court will say that this is fair. It's simple as that. Because if you break it, we don't have the time in 40 minutes to do this, but if you break down all the mathematical possibilities and the way in which this very complex system of calculating quotas and votes and percentages is broken down, it's quite clear that it's not a fair process. And I think that's where this bill is going to fail constitutional muster. I'm not taking issue with setting particular standards and making sure that it's manageable and having one person, one vote, or one seat, for one person and one independent candidate. It's in the way in which the calculations are. And I would think that I would imagine that most of the ANC people and most of the EFF people that voted for this are aware that there are problems here that need to be sorted out, that this is not just a cut and dry thing right from the beginning. So that's the debate I think that we should have, and I think that we need to have more time for that debate.
I'll have Thapelo respond in just a moment. But Narend, let me bring you in here. You are saying they should at least have looked at 50 constituencies. Minister saying, stop misleading the public and telling people that we can do this in 24 months. Because that would mean we need to go back and establish a demarcation act, an act that would then clear out these municipal boundaries. And it's not something that could happen in the next 6 months or even in the next 24 months.
No, Thabo, I think to that extent he's right. And I don't want to run the risk of going into the details of the bill and talk about quotas, etc. But the minister must first accept that taking 18 months to bring a bill before Parliament was way too long. In fact, there are other bills that we've been requested by courts to consider and amend are also facing the same predicament. We're taking far too long to come before Parliament. Parliament carries the blame. Now, what we need to do, Thabo, we believe as the IFP, is get the framework legislation right. Implementation can be on a phased basis. And I think if we get the framework, we get fairness, we get the spirit of the Constitutional Court included in any law that we pass, and then we say to ourselves as a collective that the IEC cannot implement a particular aspect of the bill until 48 months from now. That is something that we could consider moving forward. But you know, it's a non-starter right from the beginning if you impose such conditions that say to independent, listen, we don't want you. And to get 50 constituencies sorted out, I think, you know, in the next year or so, is not, we're using that as a point of departure. It's not going to be such a difficult thing. We have constituencies, we have districts already that have been established at local government level, and I don't think it's going to take rocket science to carve out constituencies in South Africa which would allow an independent to contest a particular constituency. And that's where it would end. And if you win that race, it's a winner, it's the first past the post in a constituency, which could be an independent, and why shouldn't we have that? So I think we still have an opportunity with the NCOP to get certain amendments in. And the President has done this in the past, where he says we will implement this legislation in 24 months or in 48 months from now. What the Concord wanted Parliament to do was that in 2 years we must consider ways of seeing how our laws can include independents contesting elections. And let me lastly say, perhaps I won't have a chance, that if we look at...
I'm going to give you a chance to wrap up your final thoughts when we come back from the break. They're being pushed a little bit in terms of time. Dr. Dale McKinley, EFF head of elections, Thapelo Magale, as well as the chief whip of the IFP in the National Assembly, Narend Singh, staying with us. We'll come back with your thoughts as well on 072-110-558. Welcome back live with us tonight here on In Focus. Clearly, this bill still set for a long debate going to the NCOP and, of course, some more input coming from civil society as well as other political parties still and the general public. But still with us today, IFP Treasurer General and Chief Whip of the party in the National Assembly, Narend Singh, political analyst Dr. Dale McKinley, as well as EFF National Head of Elections, Thapelo Magale. Thapelo, let me come back to you and give you an opportunity to respond to what the Doctor is saying there around the question of the calculations. Is the EFF satisfied, for example, with this first of concept of 400 seats, 200 only for independents, while political parties can contest all 400? Is that fair?
Thabo, let's maybe if we can go back a little. We know that these civil rights organizations, they went to the courts to ask that South African citizens should be allowed to stand as individuals without going through political parties to stand for public office. So the bill is exactly about that, to give them what they wanted when they approached the court. So we have that in the bill. Now, it's as if now what they want a system where the requirements or the standards are lowered in such a way that they are accommodated. They are accommodated. We are satisfied with the formula and the calculations that are being used. We think they are fair. We think they are going to ensure that there's proportionality in terms of the seat allocation and so on. So we are satisfied with that, Thabo. But my issue here is with these civil rights organizations, Thabo. And I think we should ask an even much more deeper question in terms of what exactly is the agenda? What exactly is it that this organization want to achieve? Because we have the amendment in terms of allowing South African adults to be able to contest elections as independents. It is there. We have it now. But they don't want it like that. They want something else. They want a system which where they will be able to benefit on the minimum barest standards. So we are not in support of that. We want a system which is fair for everyone, a system which allows that we are not going to be settled with chance takers who want to hijack our electoral system for whatever ends. So we are satisfied with what we have at the moment.
Dr. McKinley, as it goes to the NCOP, I have a minute really left for you. Will the parties be able to find each other still in this process that would take place in the National Council of Provinces?
I hope so. I hope that the debate is a mature one, a responsible one. I hope that the political parties do not try to basically look at their own interests and just in their own interest, but in the interest of the public. Unfortunately, the track record in Parliament on that front is not great. And let me just say specifically about civil society organizations. We have a long history in this country, over 28 years, of many civil society organizations which have intervened on a number of pieces of legislation simply to try to make them, first of all, constitutionally consistent, and also because people are concerned. And that's what a democracy is about. A democracy is about fairness and equality. And when we have a situation where many people feel, I don't think there's any hidden agenda here, it's very open, we might disagree, we can have debates, and that is very healthy to do so. But when we start labeling each other simply because we disagree with each other, I think that is unhealthy. So let's have a mature debate. Let's have a situation where we put everything on the table. And then, of course, in our constitutional democracy, the Constitutional Court will make the ultimate decision. That is the rules of the game in this case. So fundamentally, that's what is going to happen.
Narend, final thought, a minute for you there, quickly.
Yes, thank you very much, Thabo. Yeah, one would hope that the NCOP would, as a separate house, would consider the views of the public and consider the legislation with an open mind and not necessarily be influenced by what the minister says and what happened in the National Assembly. I think we have precedents now with local government independence and PR. We have countries, many countries around the world, we have independent candidates contesting. What we've got to ensure is that the playing fields are level. And I would appeal also to civil society that some of their demands, as far as we are concerned, are far-reaching, and maybe they're extending the boundaries of what the Constitutional Court has intended. And maybe they also need to come to the party and talk to the politicians of the NCOP and see how we could find each other to give this particular piece of legislation the due credit that it deserves, and to give South Africans an opportunity to participate and vote for individuals or political parties they may want. And lastly, if we look at the list of political parties that contest elections, it runs into 50, 60, maybe 100. One has just got to look at the existing ballot paper, where some of the political parties get 10 votes and 20 votes and 100 votes. So that is there already. So I don't think we should be denouncing independence and putting this high threshold of 20,000 on them. So hopefully good sense will prevail and we can come up with a win-win situation, not for political parties, not for independents, but for South Africa as a whole.
Gentlemen, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. That's Dr. Dale McKinley, political analyst there, as well as the Chief Whip of the IFP in the National Assembly, Narend Singh, EFF National Head of Elections, Thapelo Magale.